So I'm going to continue with a topic I've been talking about for the last few days. And what I want to do is explain, or using Paul's own words that he spoke to the Ephesians, to explain what his very words that he spoke to the Thessalonians. Okay? And I will go to Thessalonians first. Second Thessalonians 2. So we're going to today find out who this man of sin is. Using Paul's own words, Paul discussed this man. Starting in verse 1, now we beseech you, brethren, by the coming of our Master Yahushua Messiah, not Lord Jesus Christos. That is a name of blasphemy. Our Messiah Yahushua, or our Master Yahushua Messiah, and by our gathering together unto him, that you be not soon shaken in mind, or be troubled neither by spirit, nor by word, nor by letter, as from us, as the day of Messiah is somehow at hand at that point in time. Let no man deceive you by any means, for that day shall not come except there come a great rebellion first, and that man of sin be revealed, the son of destruction, which means he's a murderer, like Cain. Also like Antiochus the madman. It is very important to understand when Paul is going through this, he is actually comparing him to Antiochus 4, Antiochus the madman, who opposes and exalts himself above all that is called theos. Now, this is what Antiochus the madman did. That's why he is likening him to Antiochus the madman without saying his name, or that is worshipped, so that and this is what Antiochus the madman did, he called himself God. Yes, he called himself Antiochus Epiphanes. Go look up what that means. But see, Antiochus the madman was already dead and gone when Paul spoke about this. So there comes another after the order of Antiochus the madman. Or that is worship, so that he as theos sits in I used to say I'm going to say the temple because I have some backup now. Paul points out something out in Ephesians, and I'm going to get to that in just a minute. Sits in the temple of our Father in heaven. Yes, he sat in the true church at one point, which was a true church at one point, telling everyone that he is the Father. Showing himself that he is God means telling everyone that he is the Father, he himself. Okay? Don't you remember that when I was with you, I already told you these things? So the Thessalonians knew this was coming. And surely the Ephesians the Galatians and the Corinthians would have known. Now, I don't really see anywhere that he had a problem with the Thessalonians. I don't see anywhere where he had a problem with the Ephesians, of the Gentile church in the Ephesians. The problems that he had was with the Corinthians. Now the Corinthians, Corinth was right in the heart of Greece. And what was Greece's greatest god? Zeus. So it is no wonder the Corinthians tried to incorporate the name of Zeus with our Father in heaven. But they were not of us, because as John said, if they were of us, they would have never left. But they left so that they might be made manifest that they were never of us. Now, verse 6, and now you know what withholds that he may be revealed in his time. For the mystery of iniquity does already work, only he who now lets will let until he be taken out of the way. Now, who's taken out of the way? Was it Israel? Was it the Jews in Jerusalem? Apparently so. Apparently that's what that means. And that wicked one be revealed. So when the destruction of Jerusalem came and most of the Jews were removed from Jerusalem in those days, that's when, not long after that, that's when the wicked one was revealed. whom the master will consume with the spirit of his mouth and shall destroy with the brightness of his coming. Even him whose coming is after the working of Satan with all power, signs, and lying, when all deceivable and all, and we've gone over that before. Now, I want to go to, where shall I go first? Is it Peter? Oh, yes. I'll go to 1 Peter 4, verse 17 first. And Peter was an apostle to the Gentiles, as revealed in Galatians 2. Verse 7, Galatians 2, verse 7, but contrariwise, when they saw that the gospel of the uncircumcision was committed unto me, Paul, just like the gospel of the circumcision was to Peter, and the other 11. Okay? Now, Messiah had already left the earth when Paul spoke this. Well, with the exception of when Messiah came down and spoke to Paul. And he commissioned to Paul the Gentiles, okay, the uncircumcision. He commissioned that to him. And so which is why the verse in Matthew, I think it was 29, is suspect. Because Paul was commissioned to the Gentiles. Matthew 28 and verse 19. Now, Matthew 28:19, there are people who say that this was added and this does not belong in there. Well, what Paul's writings actually adds to this possibility that the Catholics added Matthew 28 verse 19, because Paul said that he was commissioned by the Messiah to go exclusively and only to the Gentiles. Well, he said he expanded his to the Hebrews too, which he spoke to the Hebrews. But the 12 apostles, and Peter were commissioned only to the 12 tribes of Israel. Now, it's not that they were not allowed to even speak to the Gentiles. That would not be true, because Peter, in fact, as I remember, did baptize a whole family of Gentiles. But for the most part, Paul was to the Gentiles, and Peter and the other 11 apostles were to the Hebrews. Once again, Paul makes it plain. All right? In Galatians 2. So, I said I was going to go to 1 Peter 4. All right. Was it 1 Peter 4? What happened here? No, it was, I'm sorry, it was Ephesians. Oh, it was 1 Peter 4, I'm sorry. Okay. So, Peter is speaking to the Hebrews. He is speaking to the Jews, the 12 tribes of Israel. And he's probably speaking to the ones in Jerusalem at this point. Verse 12, he says, "Beloved, think it not strange concerning the fiery trial which is to try you." So he is warning the Jews about a fiery trial that's about to come upon them, as though something strange has happened to you. But rejoice inasmuch as you are partakers of Messiah's suffering, that when his glory shall be revealed, you may be glad also with exceeding joy. And if you be reproached for the name of Messiah, happy are you, for the Spirit of glory and of the Father rests upon you. On their part he is evil spoken of, but on your part he is glorified. But let none of you suffer like a murderer, or as a thief, or as an evildoer, or as a busybody in other men's matters. So in other words, what he's saying is, don't get yourself locked up in jail for petty crimes or other crimes that other people are put in jail for when this time of distress comes upon Israel. Now, here it says, "Yet if any man suffer as a Christian," now remember, he didn't call them Christians. There was another group already calling themselves Christians. And also the Syrians called the believers, the Jewish believers, the Syrians called them Christians. So he says, if any man suffer as a Christian, let him not be ashamed, but let him glorify Jehovah on this behalf. For the time is coming. Now listen very, very carefully, because people focus so much on what I just said, yet if any man suffer as a Christian, that they skip over verse 17. For the time is come that judgment must begin at the household. Should be household. The household of Jehovah are the 12 tribes of Israel in Jerusalem. And he's speaking to the Hebrews. Judgment. And it did. He's talking about Antiochus the madman. When Yeshua Messiah was talking to the apostles about the abomination of desolation, about the armies, when Jerusalem is surrounded with armies. So they knew this was going to come because he told them it was going to come. So Peter is addressing the Hebrews who he was commissioned to warn them this was going to come. And you can be assured that he told them, that Peter told them exactly what Yeshua told him concerning if anyone is on the housetop, they should not come down and try to get anything out of the house but run to the mountains. All right? For the time has come that the judgment must begin at the house of Jehovah. And if it begin with us, yes, the Jerusalemites, the Hebrews, what is going to happen to them who obey not the gospel of Jehovah? What have I just been talking about? Now, obeyed not the gospel. What was Paul telling the Galatians? Listen. Galatians 2. In verse 1, then 14 years after I went up again to Jerusalem with Barnabas and took Titus with me, not Titus the Roman general, a different Titus, and I went up by revelation and communicated unto them that gospel which I preach among the Gentiles, but privately to them which were of reputation, lest by any means I should run or had run in vain. So, when he went to Jerusalem and taught, he did it privately because if he would have been caught, they would have killed him prematurely. And knowing he was commissioned to the Gentiles, he had to do, any time he preached to Hebrews, he had to do it in privately. But to the Gentiles, openly. But neither Titus, who was with me, being a Greek, but Titus was not compelled to be circumcised. And that because of false brethren unawares brought in, who came in privately to spy out our liberty, which we have in Yeshua Messiah, that they might bring us back into bondage, to whom we gave place by subjection, no, not for an hour, that the truth of the gospel might be continued with you. So, what he was saying, that even among the Hebrews, there were false brethren coming in, trying to convince Gentiles to become circumcised also, which was not correct to do. But of those who seemed to be somewhat, whatever they were, it makes no difference to him, because Jehovah does not accept any man's person. On the contrary, when they saw that the gospel of the uncircumcision was committed to me, Paul, just like the gospel of the circumcision was to Peter, for he had wrought effectually in Peter to the apostleship of the circumcision, was made mighty in me toward the Gentiles. All right. That was not the one I was looking for. But maybe it was necessary for me to talk about this again, so that you do not forget that the gospel that Paul spoke was supposed to be to the Gentiles. Now, and remember what Peter said in 1 Peter 4. What if judgment is now upon Jerusalem, is upon the household of Jehovah, Israel, right around just before 67 AD, How much worse is it going to be for those who disobey the gospel? Who was he talking about? It's in Galatians 3. Oh, you foolish Galatians, verse 1, who has bewitched you that you should not obey the truth? And the gospel is the truth. All right? So he accused the Galatians of disobeying the truth. Right? Not forgetting what Paul said about that man of sin then. So we know by the words of Peter that it's going to be even worse for the Gentiles who disobey the truth after they have received it. But this is what the Gentiles would receive should they continue in the truth. Ephesians 2. Verse 11. Wherefore, remember that you being in times past Gentiles in the flesh, who were called uncircumcision by that which was called circumcision in the flesh made by hands. So the Gentiles, the Ephesians, were called uncircumcision by Israel, by the Jews. That at that time you were without Messiah, being aliens from the household, or the citizenship, I should say, the citizenship of Israel, and strangers from the covenants of promise, having no hope. This is the Gentiles, having no hope, and without Jehovah in the world. But now in Yeshua Messiah, you who sometimes were afar off are made near by the blood of Messiah. For he is our peace, who has made both. Both? What do you mean both? The circumcision and the uncircumcision. One. And then broke down the middle wall partition between us, having abolished in his flesh the enmity, the law of commandments contained in ordinances, for to make in himself, it says, of twain one new man, and so making peace, that he might reconcile both. Wait a minute. You see, this is not replacement theology. He's talking about reconciling Israel and bringing some Gentiles in too, as well. Both unto Jehovah in one body, by one stauros, by one upright stake, not cross, not a tau, not a T-A-U, the idol of the Gentiles. Having slain the enmity between what? Between Israel and the Gentiles, thereby. And came and preached peace to you which were afar off, and to them, Israel, preaching to you, Gentiles, which were far away, and to Israelites which were near. For through him we, the Gentile and the Israelite, both have access by one Spirit unto the Father. Now, Listen carefully. Now therefore you believers, Gentile believers, are no more strangers and foreigners to Israel, but fellow citizens with the holy people and the household of Jehovah. Remember what Peter said about the household? That judgment is now come upon the household of Jehovah. That was Jerusalem. That was the Jews. And then he said, now if judgment comes upon the Hebrews, the household of Jehovah, what is going to happen though to those who disobey the gospel? As I have proven using the Galatians, Paul accused the Galatians and the Corinthians of disobeying the gospel. Okay, the household of Jehovah. Verse 20, and you are now built upon the foundation of the apostles and the prophets. Now this is very important to understand, because when you look, is it in Revelation 18, I believe it is, where it talks about the New Jerusalem coming down, and it describes it, the apostles as the foundation, the 12 apostles, each a stone for Israel. All right. The foundation of the apostles and the prophets. Not only the apostles then, but all the prophets, Jeremiah, Ezekiel, Isaiah, etc. Yeshua Messiah himself being chief cornerstone, and in whom all the building fitly framed together grows into a holy temple in the Master, in whom you also are builded together for a habitation of Jehovah through the Spirit. Now, what do we have here in 2 Thessalonians 2? Again. Verse 4, who opposes and exalts himself above all that is called theos, or that is worshipped, so that he as a theos sits in the temple of our Father, apparently among the Gentiles, you see, showing himself, claiming himself, telling everyone that he is the Father. So this temple he is speaking of is the same temple that he was talking about in the Ephesians. He would go right up in among the Gentiles in the congregation and claim himself that he is the Father, thereby corrupting the Gentile church and making those of the Gentile church who came after Paul died, and some even before Paul died, like the Corinthians and the Galatians, made them corrupt, made them disobedient of the gospel, as Peter warned. And he said, how much worse will it be for them than it was for the Hebrews when the Hebrews received their judgment 67 to 70 AD. Now I want to go over something real quick just as a reminder. I will first go to Numbers 13:16. No, actually, yeah, I'll do that first. I probably should have made another video but I will go ahead and do this. These are the names of the men which Moses sent to spy out the land. And Moses called Hoshea, renamed him, the son of Nun, Yehoshua. Why did he do that? Because Yehoshua, who was once Hoshua or Joshua as they say today, was to be called Jehovah is salvation. Why? Because he was going to lead the children of Israel into the Holy Land. Now, Joshua, or rightly named Yehoshua, did something. Joshua 4 verse 9. We'll start in verse 1. And it came to pass when all the people were clean passed over Jordan, that Jehovah spoke unto Yehoshua, saying, Take you 12 men of the people. How many men were of the apostles? 12. Out of every tribe, each tribe, a man. And command you them, saying, Take you hence, out of the midst of the Jordan, out of the Jordan River, out of the place where the priest's feet stood firm, 12 stones, and you should carry them over with you, and leave them in the lodging place where you shall lodge tonight. Then Yehoshua called the 12 men, whom he had prepared of the children of Israel, out of every tribe a man. And Yehoshua said unto them, Pass over before the ark of Jehovah your Elohim in the midst of Jordan, and take you up every man of you a stone upon his shoulder, according to the number of the tribes of the children of Israel. That is, that it may be a sign among you, that when your children ask their fathers in time to come, saying, What do you mean by these stones? And then you shall answer them, that the waters of Jordan were cut off before the ark of the covenant of Jehovah, when it passed over Jordan. The valleys of Jordan were cut off, and these stones shall be for a memorial unto the children of Israel forever. Now, let's go look. Let's see here. At Matthew 16 and verse 18. Messiah's name is also Yehoshua. And here's what he says. And I say also to you that you are Peter, a rock, and upon this pile of stones will I build my church. What? What pile of stones? See, the church, all your preachers, they told you, upon you, they say, Peter, you are a pebble, and upon this rock will I. No, that's not what it says. Let's look at it once again in Strong's Concordance in front of us, so that we are not deceived. You are Peter. That's 4074 Petros, a stone or a boulder. Peter, one of the 12 apostles, therefore one of the 12 stones. Okay? And upon this rock, the word rock, 4073. Petra, a large mass of rocks. Now, what that means is a rock for each of the tribes of Israel. You see, the first Yehoshua had a man, one of each of the tribes of Israel, take a stone out of the Jordan River, take it out and put it in their place of lodging. They would put it on a pile and make it a pile of rocks, and it was supposed to be a monument of what happened. And so Yehoshua, the second Yehoshua, did the same thing. It was in Caesarea, apparently. Came into the coast of Caesarea Philippi, which is between Haifa and Jaffa. Yes, go look on the map, you'll see it. Now, so that means upon the 12 apostles will he build his assembly. But wait, it says his church. But that's the New Jerusalem. Look, let me show you something. I will start with Revelation 3, verse 12. This is a message to the church in Philadelphia. Him that overcomes will I make a pillar in the temple of my Elohim, and he shall go no more out. And I will write upon him the name of my Elohim and the name of the city of my Elohim, which is New Jerusalem, which comes down out of heaven from my Father. Okay? Now, so what we have here is the New Jerusalem coming down out of heaven. He explains that it will come down out of heaven in Revelation 3 verse 12 and in Revelation 21 verse 2. And I saw the holy city. I, John, saw the holy city, the New Jerusalem, coming down out of the Father from heaven, prepared like a bride for her husband. And I heard a great loud voice out of heaven saying, Behold, this is the temple. Tabernacle is temple. So the New Jerusalem is the temple. Behold, the temple, the tabernacle of Jehovah is with men, and he will dwell with them, and they shall be his people. And Jehovah himself shall be with them, and be their Elohim, and Jehovah shall wipe away all their tears from their eyes, and there shall be no more death, neither sorrow nor crying, neither shall there be any more pain. That's inside the holy city. Now, verse 10, and he carried me away into the spirit into a great and high mountain, and showed me that great city, the holy Jerusalem, descending out of heaven from Jehovah, having the glory of Jehovah, and her light was like unto a stone most precious, even like jasper stone, clear as crystal. And it had a wall great and high, and it had 12 gates, and at the gates 12 angels, and the names written thereon, which are the names of the 12 tribes of the children of Israel. And on east 3 gates, so the 12 tribes of Israel remain intact and will walk in those gates. The names are on, which are the names of 12 tribes of Israel, on the east 3 gates, on the north 3 gates, and on the south 3 gates, on the west 3 gates. And the wall of the city had 12 foundations. Yes. Upon these pile of rocks, Matthew, Mark, Luke, Johannan, Jude, the rest of them, that was the foundation. That was what the New Jerusalem will be built upon. So each, the foundations, on the 12 foundations, in them the names of the 12 apostles of the Lamb. Now you can read, the city was 4 square and was like 1,500 miles each way. My point is, the temple, being the congregation, and more specifically being the congregation among the Gentiles, that was where the man of sin would enter into and make and claim that he is the Father. And today, that man still exists, and he is the man who sits on the imperial seat of the Caesars at the Vatican. Now, if by now, listening to my commentaries and my videos, you are not convinced of this, then I do not know how to help you. But I will say this. Peter was right. The Gentiles who did not obey the gospel, and why do I say Gentiles? Because Israel as a nation, their eyes were blinded according to the words of Paul in Romans 11. So then by default, the statement that Peter made goes to the Gentiles. If those who do not obey, if judgment is now, at that time, 67 AD, come upon the household of Jehovah, which is Israel, Jerusalem, how much worse is it going to be for those who disobeyed the gospel when it was given to them, i.e. the Gentiles? It's coming. Just as sure as punishment and judgment came upon Jerusalem in 67 to 70 AD, so shall punishment and judgment come upon Rome and the entirety of Europe, Western civilization, and any nation who raise a sword up against the Jews. That is coming just as assuredly as the destruction of Jerusalem came in 67 to 70 AD. Guaranteed. And it will come on the Gentiles because they disobeyed the gospel. The gospel plainly states that the Gentiles could have equal citizenship with Israel in the New Jerusalem if they obeyed the gospel. How can the Gentiles claim they obeyed the gospel when they took the sword against the Jews? Not possible. They, like Cain, drew the sword against the Jews, and they continued generation after generation after generation after generation until 1945. This is proof. They disobeyed the gospel. They threw it on the ground and tread it underfoot as if it were an unclean thing. That kind of indignation cannot be forgiven. So I say to one and I say to all, watch world events. I will start talking again about world events shortly because things are happening right now as we speak. We do not want to be caught unawares, find ourselves locked up in jail for doing stupid things when these events take place upon the Gentiles.